Okay, saving, we're going to look at fairly quickly, saving and investing. And really saving, you've got different goals. It's really making provision for tomorrow. It's really the opposite of debt or different mindset to debt. And it's your first step of investing. If you don't have any money to save, you can't put anything into long term. So that's why when we looked at that pie chart, we said make it a habit. Because even if you start saving a little bit, and my kids now, though, I give them money for their the living allowance now while they're not earning, they have to save 10% of their living allowance for holidays or expenses that they might come across that they don't know about. All right, so the wise man saves for the future, the foolish man spends whatever he gets, and all of us are foolish at some stage. Okay, the different types of savings, briefly. You've got short-term savings, where you want to save something for a short-term, a holiday, or something that you want to do with. And what I suggest there with your short-term is start with an emergency fund. So your first savings should go into somewhere where you know you can access it in the event of losing a tire or having an extra vet's bill or something that life happens. We always have those emergency expenses. And we suggest having a fund of about 10,000 Rand, because that is enough, or 15,000 Rand probably is a bit safer. So aim towards saving that 15,000 Rand, and I'll show you in a minute how you can do that. Okay. And then you can also use that for plans. And then your goal after you've saved your emergency fund is to plan to save for about I used to say 6 months. I've now put there after COVID 6 to 12 months. Because if you have your living expenses saved for 12 months, so not just work out what your living expenses are. If you have that buffer accessible in the event of losing your job or work, you know that you're going to be able to access that money without going into debt. So that's your goal, is to save. Very hard. It is a hard one. And there's ways of going about it, either putting more into your bond so that you've got some access to that cash if you need it. But people have lost homes now. They've lost relationships. They've lost their income, so they actually can't afford to do that. If there was a buffer of 6 months, at least especially as entrepreneurs, if you are trading time for money, or if you are the workforce of your company, if you get ill or something happens and you can't work for 6 months, you don't have any income. So, just as a peace of mind to have that 6 months, and you can put it into a long-term investment or something where you can access it within a month or two, but at least you've got that backup and you've got some sort of a buffer in the event of COVID happening or something. So, all right, so we've got short-term savings, we've got long-term savings, which are really your investments. So you're looking for the long-term, you want to be able to retire more comfortably, and that's kind of your inheritance, if you want to leave an inheritance for your children other than debt. And then, so you're putting something in a long term, so you're not going to draw it, and it's in mindset that it's away for your future. All right, and it's for you or your family, so it's not a negative thing. It's looking after your future self. All right, so investing is where you build your assets. Remember, assets are anything that brings money into our lives, property and stocks and shares, any businesses that you can generate an income from, and then yourself. Those are the 4 assets that we can look at. So the first step to building your assets is find out what are your investment goals. What are you wanting to do? You maybe want to start off investing just 5% of your income, but maybe get to 15%. You want to maybe invest in, some people like property. You want to, by the end of 2 years, buy an investment property that you can rent out and generate income from, or just set some basic goals and know when you're wanting to actually become financially free. If you know that you need 3 million Rand in 20 years' time, you can work backwards and say, okay, how much do I need to be investing now so that my nest egg in 10 years' time or 20 years' time is going to be 3 million, which will give me 30,000 Rand a month that I can live on without touching the capital, and then have a lifestyle that I choose, if you can live off 30,000 Rand. All right, have some sort of a strategy. Yes, but that's a good question, your future value of money, but also the idea is then once you start getting that, you're still investing, so you're still putting back, and that's kind of hopefully over counteracting inflation, but we'll keep it simple. So build your assets on autopilot, see it as paying yourself first. And then just put in that once you can afford to put that 10% or 15% of your income into that automatic. It goes off before you actually have to allocate your other living expenses. And then over time, that's going to get compound interest and work in your favor. All right, with investing, it's good to diversify. I always say don't put all your eggs in one basket. All right, so the idea is to diversify. And on our investment course, we show you how to diversify, where to put your money safely, so that long term you're not kind of invested all in one thing, so that if crypto dives or property dives or South Africa crunches, you're still going to be okay for the long term. All right, so what to invest in, we had a look at that. We've mentioned that already, property, equities, stocks and shares, and I mentioned earlier that equities, the stock market now is very easy to invest in. It's so easy to get started. It's easy to put 50 Rand in a month or 500 or 5,000, and you can manage your own portfolio. You need a little bit of knowledge, yes, and that's exactly, yeah, I know, it is that. And that was me January, beginning of last year. I also was like investing, and I ran my first workshop, personal finance skills, and they said, okay, now we want to know, we've got money to save, where do we put it? So I now have an Investing 101 workshop where we show you the basics of investing on the stock market. My background and experience is mostly in property and hard assets like containers, because that's something that I understood, and we did very well off property. But because it was so hard to invest in the stock exchange 30 years ago, you had to have a broker, you couldn't do it yourself. So now it's very easy, and you can either use an investment platform through your bank, or Easy Equities is a South African one that I'm learning from my children, because it's so easy, you know. And you need a little bit of knowledge because you can make big mistakes, and there are some strategies that you need to do and not go with your gut feel, and certainly get your emotions out of it. But if you learn a little bit, it's very easy to be your own broker, to invest in stocks on the stock exchange, or, which is safe, is to invest in electronic traded funds or index tracker funds, which are groups of funds. So you're reducing your risk, and over the long term, it's a good way to go for your long-term investing, and you're certainly going to do a lot better than if you invest in something like, or put your money into a savings account. Okay. Yeah, I like property. A lot of people don't like property, and the thing with that is it's a lot more to manage, especially if it's a fixed property, because you've got tenants, you've got repairs, you've got agents. There's a little bit of backtrack, but it's still been very beneficial for us from that point of view. But we also bought a lot of property when it was easy to get in, with a low down payment. And in fact, we bought one property with no money down. So yeah, that was our first ski trip that we saved up for. we were saving to go to Tiffendale, which is a ski, do you know Tiffendale? Yeah, this little ski center. Yeah, it's beautiful, it's lovely. And we skied at university, and our friends all skiing, and they would go overseas often, but we thought, okay, we'll go to Tiffendale because it's a lot cheaper. It's still a jolly expensive holiday. Yeah. Anyway, we'd saved up for that, and then a friend of ours invited us to a cocktail party. He was also kind of a financial manager and helped us with a bit of our finances. But he invited us to the launch of a block of flats or units that had just been built, called Epsom Downs. So we went along, and the real reason really is because Ines was a friend of ours, and we didn't want to say no, and we knew that there would be a free supper. So we left with our free supper and a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment for our 10,000 Rand down. That was our ski trip, which we had saved. But it was the best thing that we ever did, because it just launched us into investments. It wasn't developed yet, that whole Folkestone Downs, Folkestone Downs. 6 months later, they had built it, and we sold, and we made 90,000 Rand profit on our 10,000. Well, we sold it for 100,000. We made 90,000 profit. We put 10,000 down. Anyway, so as I said, I wasn't good with numbers, but we made a profit on that because we sold. We bought off plan, then we sold when they were launching. So with that 90,000 Rand, we went and bought 2 investment properties. And so that just got us into the property market, and it was a time when it was actually very beneficial. And our rental soon, in the beginning we were paying into the bond, but it wasn't too long before the bond started being paid by the rental. But I must say, it is hard work. You know, you've got to find tenants, and then sometimes they default. And then, yeah, so if you've got the stomach for that and the time for that, it's a nice form of passive income. Yeah, so work out how many properties you need to actually, you know, subsidize, and then it takes off that pressure as well. You've got that money coming in every month. But you can do it much more easily now. You can buy properties on the stock exchange. You can buy REITs, which are real estate investment trusts, and you can actually buy property, but you don't have the management fee. So you buy into a group, and it's the same concept. You're owning real property. You're getting dividends or income from the rental, and your property value is growing. And you can do that also on the stock exchange. So it's much easier to do now. So on our investment course, we cover that in quite a lot of detail. So those of you who are interested, I can tell you a bit more about it. All right, and then this wonderful thing called compound interest, which has been known as the eighth wonder of the world. And if you have a look at that, we looked at debt now and how much the bank is earning, or people who we owe money to is earning from us because of our debt. But it also works in the opposite direction. So if you are putting money in, you get compound interest, and it means you're getting interest on your interest, and over time, that makes a huge difference. All right, so basically we look at with interest, there's an amount that you're putting in. There is an interest rate. Are you getting 6% or 10%? And then there's time. Are you putting it in for a year or 40 years? And that makes a huge difference. You've got a little spreadsheet there as well. So we're just going to take that same figure that we used earlier of 1,000 Rand, if that was 1,000 Rand debt, and you saying you're going to put 1,000 Rand in a year. And people say, I can't save. I don't have any money to save. I think anyone can save 2.74 Rand a day, which is 1,000 Rand a year. All right, even if you kind of put your coffee money into something like this, you'll get way more than 1,000 Rand. So it's a little bit of money. It's not a lot over a long period of time. Your amount, and we're looking at 10% interest, which is very doable. If you put 1,000 Rand in, at the end of the first year, you've got 10% interest, it's 1,100 Rand. After 20 years, you've put in 20,000, but it's now worth 63,000. And over 40 years, which is kind of what we look at if we start earning at 20 and retire at 60, but now if we're 40 or 50, it's like 80 or 90, which is a realistic figure we're going to be living to. You've put in 40,000, and you've got nearly 500,000, okay, because you're getting interest on your interest. So, and that's not a lot of money. 1,000 Rand a year, it's nothing. If you put 1,000 Rand a month in, you're going to get 10%. You're going to be 4 million, okay, 10 times. All right, because what happens in the beginning, it just grows slowly, and then it reaches a point where your interest is accumulating more and more, and so your curve, your graph, is increasing. Okay, the interest rates, that's the next thing that makes a difference. We're going to just look at a couple of different interest rates and how it makes a difference. So the same thing, 1,000 Rand a year. We should actually say 1,000 Rand a month, but we're just keeping it really small to show you that it's doable. You don't need masses of money to make a big difference. So if your interest is 6%, after 40 years, your growth is going to be, you're going to have 164,000 Rand. If it's 8%, it's double. And then if it's 10%, 500,000. At 12%, 400,000, and then 850,000 odd. Okay, so that means you're going to need to look at your investments carefully and where you're putting them to try and get the least risk with the most interest rate. And you should be able to get a long-term investment between 10 and 12% quite easily, so you know that you're looking, but it makes a big difference, even at 10 and 12% at the end of the day. Okay. All right, so we're just taking two people, maybe brothers. So person A starts putting in 1,000 Rand a year, just using that same simple figure, and puts in 1,000 Rand a year for 8 years and then stops. So he starts at the age of 21, puts 1,000 Rand in a year, stops at the age of 28. His brother then decides, okay, I'm going to start putting money aside. So on year 8 years. So when he stops, his brother starts and puts 1,000 Rand in a year. What happens when they retire at 65 is that the person who put in earlier for 8 years has put in a total amount of 8,000. He's now accrued 427,000. His brother has put in 37,000 Rand because he started late. He now only has 363,000 Rand. So that's the benefit of starting now. And people say, I can't do it now because I can't afford to. The sooner you start, the better, because of compound interest is going to benefit you later on. So, in fact, Brother B will never catch up to Brother A because of their compound interest if they just keep at that pace. All right, so also something for your children to think about is if you just put 1,000 Rand in now for them. My nephew just had his 21st birthday, and my brother put in, I think, 100 Rand a month or 200 Rand a month into their accounts, and he handed over a 97,000 Rand check to his son for his 21st birthday. And I think it was just 100 Rand a month or something. I've got to work out the numbers and things. But that's what, and he was getting about 10% on his, or 12%. All right, so it's all very well growing our wealth and knowing the benefits of getting something with interest rather than paying the bank interest, the importance of saving, even if it's a little bit over the long term. But then it also needs to be, come to a point we need to protect our wealth and say, are we going to actually put some things in place because if anything happens, we don't want all of the hard work and savings to go. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky and it gets expensive because insurance, I know I resent paying a lot of insurance because it just seems like money going out that you actually need for other things. But there are some insurances that you do need. A lot of people are overinsured, and some people just pay insurance where they feel that they get scared and they have to protect themselves. But basically, most insurances that you do need is life insurance, especially if you have a family. If anything happens to you, you want to have some life insurance. And you need to speak to an investment advisor to know how much life insurance you need, just to make sure that they're going to be covered okay. Household contents insurance. Home insurance or house insurance is essential. When you buy a house, you have to have house insurance. Just have a look at the amounts of that as well. And I realized with my house insurance, I did a COVID exercise last year to see where we were spending too much. And I had my home loan, my living house home loan with Standard Bank. And every year they just put the insurance and they kind of come up with a valuation. And I was paying a huge amount, and they said, because the value of your house is this. I said, there's no ways my house is valued at that. I said, how do you get that? I haven't had a person to my house for 14 years since we built, and now suddenly they're valued at this. Anyway, so we had a bit of debates, and I got about 600 Rand less insurance with the other company that I was insured for vehicles and stuff. And they were very sticky. They gave me such a hard time. They said, no, we can't do that. Your house has to be valued at this. So they eventually sent around a house valuer to assess the value of the house. And I was overinsured. And for how many years have I been paying too much insurance? Because it just goes up every year. So just keep an eye on that, or just kind of make sure that you want to be properly insured. And you have to insure in the event that your house falls down and you have nothing and you have to rebuild. So now they work it out as the rebuild value of that property. So it's a bit of a tricky one, but you're often paying too much. Your car insurance we spoke about earlier. All right, medical aid, we did speak about a little bit earlier. I'm not going to go into more detail with that. Just see what you do need, what cover you do need. Income insurance, especially if you're working for yourself. All right, and then disability and critical illness. So those are all of the insurances that you need. You will get people trying to sell you pet insurance and pothole insurance and all sorts of different things that it's easy to get tied into. And if you feel that that's a need in your life, go ahead, but it's probably going to just be an expense. But those are the definite insurances that you do need to protect yourself and to be able to sleep at night. I know a few people who have cut off their health insurance because they can't afford it. You know, they don't have any income, they're paying rent and food, they can't drive their car because they don't have any money. So, you know, the next thing to go is your medical aid. But if anything happens, then it's just a huge responsibility on your family and loved ones. So don't put them in that position. So we've looked at saving, investing, budgeting, all the essentials and things, but how do you put this all together, and how do you time it, and what do you work on first? So there's a 7-step plan to your financial wealth, or your financial security, or financial freedom, whatever you want to call it. And the first thing is just going to really kind of summarize it, and they're all baby steps. It's one step at a time. As I've mentioned before, it's not going to happen overnight. So your first goal is, if you go from here and you say, where do I start? There's too many things. Obviously, get your budget right and get your expenses less than your income. And then your first goal is to save 10,000 Rand or 15,000 Rand towards your emergency fund, so that you've got that buffer in the event of life events happening, and it's just peace of mind. And I've found that a lot of young couples, when they know, especially the woman, likes to know that little bit of security there, it just makes a huge difference to that natural, comfortable feeling or that security. All right, so that's your first step. Your second step is to pay off all your debt. And if you use that debt snowball plan, you'll be able to pay it off in much less time than you think. So, third step is to focus on paying into your emergency fund about 6 months of your living expenses, and eventually work towards having 12 months, especially if you're self-employed or an entrepreneur and you don't have a regular income. So that's your third goal. All right, after that, you can look at investing 10% of your income for retirement, or possibly more. And I would like to say, even start putting a little bit of investment aside while you are saving towards your retirement plan and while you're paying off your debt, even if it's 100 Rand a month, because that's then working towards you, and it's just giving you that little bit of an edge. So I wouldn't wait until you've paid off everything and got your emergency fund. That might take you 10 years, all right, depending on your situation now. So start investing a little bit, but work towards eventually paying 10%, and then you can up that. All right, once you've got no debt, it's easier to then put more money into your investment. Okay, so work at 10 to 15%. If you have children, the next step is to try and put a fund together for your children. And decide how you want to do that. What we did, there were a whole lot of children funds and savings policies for kids' education, and we looked at that and we thought, didn't quite ring right, and you don't know what university is going to cost in 15 years' time when your child's there. So what we decided to do was buy property. So we bought a property for each of the children, not telling them this is your property, but that was our insurance or our policy for them for their education. So if anything happened to anything else, we knew that that property would pay for their tertiary education. Our one gift for our children was to be able to give them the best education that we could afford. So that's what we did, and it worked well. We still have 2 of those properties. The one we sold because of financial viability at the time, we got a good offer. But yeah, that's just a way. But you need to allow for that, because college, university is very expensive. All right, plan to pay off your home loan early and just see if you can just put a little bit more into your home loan, if you can do that. I would suggest you first pay off your other debt before your home loan, but that's your next step towards getting into a financially secure position. And then the final one is, once you've got no expenses, no debt, you're saving 10% or 15%, you're investing 15%, then you're in a position where you can now focus on your future wealth and where you want to be. Okay, and then give more. Okay, the more you're able to earn, the more you're able to give. You know, and some people say it's so hard to how do you get your 10,000 Rand or 15,000 Rand fund? And it's putting a little bit of money aside, but just some ideas of way to quickly generate 10,000 Rand, and just be a little bit open-minded. This is when you get creative. First thing is to cut back on your spending, and you need to be vigilant with this, maybe just for a month or 2. All right, so no coffees, no cappuccinos. If you just save that 25 Rand, and if it's your crux and your lifestyle and your saving thing, instead of your 5 cappuccinos a week, maybe have a 1 cappuccino a week. So just for a month or 2, be vigilant, be focused, get obsessive about saving that money, because then it becomes almost a challenge, and it gets much easier. A lot of people eat out, and some people think I'm working hard, I don't have time to cook, I'm going to eat out. If you don't have, even just get homemade takeaway meals, it's a lot cheaper than actually going out to a restaurant. Or if you insist on going to a restaurant, go to somewhere that's not licensed so that you can take your own bottle of wine. But the best thing is that if you're trying to save that, Lindsay, we're just seeing how we can save our emergency fund quickly. So if you're trying to save that 10,000 Rand quickly, have a look at that. Cut back on your hair and your manicures and anything. If they become a habit and part of your lifestyle, for a while, do without it. Cut away your TVs and things. Try and increase your income over time, part-time, side hustle. There are ways of getting creative and using your talents and your gifts and the things that you like doing to try and earn some extra income. And it's not easy. We can have a brainstorming session of trying to earn extra income, but if you're desperate and you need to do that, you will find some ways. All right. Gather up all your loose change in cash. It's amazing if you just kind of gather bits and pieces, and it learns you, we talked about it earlier, the value of money, and just even those little bits make a difference. All right, check your insurance policies. Okay, so those are a few ways of how you can quickly get that 10,000. Once you've got that, put it into a savings account. I would suggest Time Bank, so that in the case of emergencies, you're not going to go into debt again. Obviously, if you do have an emergency and you need to use it, then you need to recap it and top it up again. All right, that is the toughest session, but I hope it makes a little bit of sense now about how big a difference a little bit can make.